Hi, I'm Adam and welcome back to First Man Photography. Now, in today's video, we are going to see if a battered old camera can still take good photos. And not only that, but produce something that could be considered art. Something worthy of gracing our walls. Let's go. Before we get going today though, this video is sponsored by Lexa. If you need fast, reliable and high quality SD cards, look no further than Lexa. Right, I'm going to find my way down to this beautiful beach. It's quite windy up here and it's seascapes that I'm after with that camera. Quite a few times on this channel over the last couple of years, people have accused me or said that I only get good images because of the good camera that I use and that they can't do that because they can't afford a good camera. So I've been meaning to do this for a while, a little challenge where I use a sort of cheaper camera and still try and capture some good images. And I'm a little bit nervous because I don't think it's anything to do with the camera up to a certain point. And it's me that has to make the images, so it makes it a little bit nerve-wracking. But the camera I am going to use today, if I take it out of my bag, is this. It is the Canon 800D. Now, I reviewed this camera several years ago and yeah, I gave it a good review. It's a great camera. It's got a 24 megapixel sensor, and ever since that day I used it as my vlogging camera, as a video camera, until I replaced it with this, the Sony ZV-1. But I have put this through hell and back and it never let me down. Well, actually it did, but it was when I dropped it in the water and it got completely saturated. I was sure it was ruined that day, but yeah, it sort of came back to life. Had a few issues with the sensor once the electronics came back to life, but then I'd sort of written it off, so just left it on the radiator. And now it functions almost perfectly. The screen doesn't really sit back in its place now because that was when it fell at this moment when I was in Scotland with Morton Hilmer. The lens, which is the Canon 10 to 18mm, I've reviewed before and given it a pretty bad review. It is a very cheap lens, but it does still capture decent pictures, and it was the lens I always used for vlogging. So I've kind of got a bit of a love-hate relationship with this lens. So if you were smart and a bit shrewd, you could get it for about £250 on eBay, and the lens for a bit less than that. But let's make the most of having this beach pretty much to myself and go and make some pictures. Right, so I'm set up for my first shot of the day, and to be honest, I'm pretty excited about it because as the tide is quite far out, we've just got this beautiful beach exposing all these rock pools, the seaweed or moss, whatever it is, that's adding that really deep green to the scene. We've then got that beautiful blue sea and those cliffs in distance, and then every now and again the sun comes out, which just produces some beautiful highlights, particularly on these rocks just down here, and they just look fantastic. And I think what it's going to provide is a really good test of this Canon 800D, and particularly the lens, because I'm going to shoot as wide as I possibly can and try and get the whole lot in. I've got these couple of pools here, this one just there, that one just there, kind of forming the mid-ground of the image, the rocks close to the lens in the foreground, and then the cliffs and those really, really interesting clouds off in the distance. So yeah, I'm quite excited about it, and I think with all the detail in these rocks, with the greens and all the different colours, it's going to really test this lens out, particularly in the corners. Full disclaimer, I do have a relatively expensive filter system on there, but you don't need to pay a lot for filter systems really, and all I'm using it for is for a circular polarizer, because with the sun kind of over to my left there, as it's beating down on these rocks and this pool, I want to remove some of the glare from the highlights, basically, to give it a deeper, richer feel to the image. Yeah, I don't think really there's much more to it than that, other than waiting for the light. Settings wise, I'm at f11, I'm at 10mm on this 10 to 18mm lens, so that's the equivalent of 16mm, so really quite wide. That sun's come out now. I'm at f11, ISO 100, and I'm focusing on a rock just quite close to me there. I'm bracketing one stop either side just to be safe, because I've not really used this camera for stills before and I'm not 100% confident in its dynamic range. So that's the only reason. I don't really need to, because the histogram is suggesting that the image is well exposed, but I just want to be sure. Don't want to take any chances, because I actually think, looking at that, it's a pretty nice scene. That sun is quite low in the sky now, as you can see, adding a really nice warmth to this evening and to that image. There's a little bit of yellows starting to appear in those clouds, subtle at the moment, but if I wait a bit longer it could warm up even more. So sunset is on the way, but before that happens, as you know, this video is sponsored by Lexa. Now Lexa, in my opinion, just make the best memory cards on the market. I've used them for many, many years, and to be honest, I have put them through hell and back. I've drowned them in the water, I've bashed them about, I've dropped them, I've crushed them, just about anything you can imagine, and they have never let me down. And that's because they are really high quality. They're also fast. I particularly like this one. It's the Lexa Professional 1800X, and that's operating in this camera, filming 4K at the moment, and in the Canon 800D, capturing everything or all the images that you see today. It's the kind of card that you just pop it in, you forget about it, because it just does absolutely anything and it won't let you down, and you get those fast transfer speeds as well. So hit the link down below to give Lexa some love for sponsoring this channel, and yeah, happy shooting. Right, so I am set up for my second shot just as the sun is about to dip behind the cliff there, and it is, I think the wind has actually picked up, which is making it slightly difficult because this camera's quite light. It's at the point of blowing the tripod over just at the same time as the tripod is sinking into the sand. But I'm very attracted by this scene because, oh my god, the wind. Because the way the water is kind of going out and down this beach, it's providing a beautiful reflective surface that warm evening light is bouncing off, and the sky's looking beautiful and interesting with some dotted clouds around which just look great, and you can see them reflected in the sand. And I'm using these two rocks to kind of anchor the image in the foreground, and there's a lot of contrast in the sea where the ripples are and the waves are, so I just want to remove that with the use of the 6-stop filter here. So very simply slid in. I'm also using the polarizer. This time I want the reflection on the sand, so I've spun it slightly to give a little bit of more of a definition to the clouds. I'm at f11 ISO 100. I'm just gonna shoot it. I'm focusing on the rock, and it's only a 2.5 second exposure, so the fact that the tripod is slowly sinking into the sand shouldn't be too much trouble. So much water around as well that it's making it especially difficult. I just think that looks absolutely incredible. Like you see the sun behind me, it's just fantastic. What I think I will do with that one, possibly, is crop it down. I think into a square crop. I think that's good. So windy. I think that's going to work really well for this image. Just make it all about those two rocks anchoring that image. Smooth light, or beautiful light, smooth water, nice straight line of the horizon. Yeah, straightforward, simple as that. And we'll see what this camera can do with a slightly longer exposure. Right, so we've come towards the end of the day now, and the clouds have pretty much disappeared, so I'm gonna make the very last of the light behind that cliff now. I've had to come further down the beach to see the sun again, and I'm kind of using the curvature of the shoreline to lead me up to the cliffs, and it's a very straightforward image. I'm gonna bracket 2 stops either side. I'm gonna do one and then do another and use the thumb technique to block the sun so I get a good exposure. It's not going to be the greatest image, I don't think, but it could be interesting. let me have a look. The sun looks great and that beach looks clean, the lines of the water. It's just a last shot to really make the most of the last of the light, because I was hoping for that nice colourful sky, but that's not going to happen. But I think that could still be good. It's sort of tilted down, so there's not too much sky. There is a bit of warmth and colour and yellows and a few wispy clouds in there, so it could be interesting. Slightly frantic because the light's just going to disappear at any second. It's a nice way to finish the day. But let's now head back to the studio, see if I've got something that's print worthy, get it printed, and then we can look at the detail and see if this camera that you can get for about £250 can produce that artwork, that wall-worthy picture that we were talking about. I'm hopeful. I think it can, but let's see. Right, here we go then. I couldn't really decide which one to print, so I printed two, and I am particularly happy with this one, partly because I've decided to print it on this really high gloss paper. If I kind of use the light to show you how reflective that paper is, what that's done is just work so beautifully for the area at the bottom here where you've got the water covering that sand and that really reflective sand. The reflectiveness of the paper just sets that off so beautifully. I'm really excited about that one, and I was right, and I think the square crop does work really well for that. The second one I then printed was the sunset shot, and it's just so disappointing that there aren't slightly more clouds in the sky. But looking at this one, printed in A2, nice and big, if I kind of study it closely, I'm really rather impressed, to be honest. Sometimes printing can be quite forgiving, but if I showed you this and didn't tell you what camera it was used, or what camera I used to shoot it with, I don't think you'd particularly know. You could easily sell that, or either of them, and people would be very happy with it. I'm not saying that a budget camera is just as good as a high-end camera, because that's not quite the case, because you definitely, with the higher end cameras, you definitely get something that's more rugged, something that's often more usable and reliable as well in all conditions, and you will get better image quality. But as a place to start, you're good with a budget camera, and you can get prints like this that, like I say, you can sell and you'll be very satisfied with. So I hope you found this video useful. If you have, please subscribe to the channel, like the video as well, and also please help me out by checking my book out, and that's got lots of my images from the last few years. It's got stories of when I was in the police, and then at the end it has QR codes that link you to the video where I actually made that particular image, and that's almost all the images in the book. So yeah, that's it. I will see you on another one very, very soon. I'm Adam. This is First Man Photography. Bye.